Thanks, Michelle. So, first thing I always need to do, Michelle never lists my job title. I think it's because he's slightly embarrassed. I am... Yeah, he is. Yeah, very good. I am Microsoft UK's Chief Envisioning Officer. Check me out, right? You need to know that it's a comedy job title. I work for a company you will well know that for many, many years has talked to you all about the incredible technology and the products that we make. And you would think that today would be a day where we are going to continue to talk about technology and products. But my role is different. My role is part of a growing number of people inside the organization who are trying to bring to life the opportunity that our technology and products enable in human beings. My job is about projecting forward to the future of how human beings are going to want to live, work, and play. So essentially, my job is about the future of humanity, right? And I kind of figured if I'm going to have a job that's about the future of humanity, I deserve, nay, I demand a job title with a certain degree of pomposity to support it. I think you'll agree I've achieved that. The second thing I told my mum when I was a kid, I said, Mum, one day, I'm going to be CEO at Microsoft. You just watch me. And some of you will know there's recently been an opening. And this is still the only way I'm going to blag that job title. So, the story today is about this thing called the Digital Deluge. You've all been provided with a copy of the book. It's basically a story about how technology is shaping how we think and how we work. And part of the challenge we have as human beings is some of this often happens unnoticed to us. We make choices that we don't really realize the impact. And this isn't about bad technology. This is simply about bad usage. And I wanted to wake up people to the opportunity that's being missed if we don't achieve that. The other thing I have to explain about myself, and again, I know you'll find this hard to believe, but I have dedicated my entire career to the IT industry, some 20-odd years. I have chosen to work for one of the world's largest technology companies. I have gone to the extremes of personal grooming to grow a beard and a ponytail. And I also quite like Star Trek. What a surprise. Star Trek's really important, right? Because it teaches you, when you're a young, naive, gullible kid like what I was, it teaches you that technology is supposed to be a force for good in our society. It's supposed to be something that enables human beings to reach up and extend beyond what they could normally achieve. This is why technology exists. It exists to help us change behavior, to change what's possible. My problem is the 20 years, my experience in IT, I look around me, I look at how we all use technology today, and I don't see a big release. I don't see this empowerment. What I see instead is a prison. And again, it's formed by the human beings that use the technology. We become slaves to technology. Who doesn't get enough email? I don't even have to write a punchline to that joke. Everybody gets the pain of that story. So we set out a few years ago to tell a very different story, to focus on the potential, to look at the problems, and really to wake people up to the opportunity that sits in their hands every day. So we wrote the first book, which was Business Reimagined. I'm a cheap date. You can get all of the books for free online. The Business Reimagined book was about why work isn't working, so it's focused purely on the workforce. The second book that you have now is about the human beings. It's about the human potential with technology. So there's this concept of the digital deluge, and we're all aware of it. We talk about having too much information every day. But the digital deluge, we have to understand, is actually in two dimensions. It's not just the fact that we have too much information. It's the fact that now, thanks to these things, the fact that we have these beautiful, engaging, wonderful devices and the connected services that power them, we cram in every moment of our waking day access to too much information. We are constantly looking for more information. We seek out more information wherever we are, whatever we're doing. And often, it's having a very negative effect on what we're doing. These devices, they disrupt us. They change the way we think. They interrupt our behavior. And we have to be aware of this. And again, this isn't about bad devices. It's just simply about how we have chosen to use them, how we have slipped in to using them. Because we've developed a number of coping mechanisms. And these coping mechanisms are really at the root of the challenge that we face ahead. If we're going to go into a world where it is mobile first and it is cloud first, then we have to be aware of these and make some very different choices. So the first coping mechanism is about how stressed we become. So we're so stressed at work because we have too much information, the devices are with us. It goes back to the issue with Alexander Graham Bell, funnily enough, and it's all his fault. Because in 1876, he created this incredible invention, the telephone, that was genius, right? It was wonderful, because he took us from a world that was all about machine-to-machine communication, so telex and telegraph machines with a human operator transferring information from one place to another, to a human-to-human experience. So this was brilliant, because we all understand how to communicate with each other. Alexander Graham Bell comes up and he enables us to be able to communicate anywhere around the world. The challenge is, as we've gone further, we now live in this brilliant world, right? I can stand on the street corner outside of this office. I can phone pretty much anywhere in the world. I am globally connected thanks to these devices. But the really interesting thing that started happening to all of us is as much as I am now able to connect to people who are geographically separated, this technology has started to disconnect me from the people that I'm with. It's starting to, you've seen situations like this, or maybe you've seen this at work, where we use collaborative technology. How many of you work in an open plan office? How many of you sit in your open plan desk and email the person sat next to you? Right? One time we go, he's bloody next to you, talk to him, say hello. Right? This is the challenge, right? And the technology, it sucks us in. And so we forget, it disconnects us. How many of you have this experience at home? Right? We're all familiar with this. I sit down for some quiet family time with the Coplin family. We sit down to dinner. I get out my phone. My son gets out his nameless tablet device, and my wife gets out her device. And we all sit there in our own little digital worlds. It's just insane. And then there's this other thing about how the technology is actually disconnecting us from the world around us. How many times have you been to a concert or some big public event, New Year's Eve in Trafalgar Square, only to see thousands of people watch the event from here? You know? And it's just bizarre. I went up and spoke to somebody who was doing that, and I said, what are you doing? You know, do you not think you might want to enjoy the environment? You know, what's going on? And it's all right, I've got an HD camera. Right, yeah, I've got one of those too. It's called My Eyes. You know? And so we just forget, because the technology's there, we feel we have to use it and it disconnects us. So the coping mechanisms that we've invented to cope with all of this stuff actually caused a problem. Because we have these devices, because we have these incredible services, we start to skim information. We would rather go and read the next email or look for the next tweet or click on the next link than take some time to take a step back and think about how we were going to answer the last email. We have other issues where we snack on information all the time. We fill every moment of our day with a little information snack. You will all do this. I don't know anybody these days who goes in an elevator more than 3 floors without pulling out their phone. Just check. We fill just all these empty calories of information, and again, we're not allowing our brains the time to go deep. And then we start to use filters, and filters are brilliant, right? Search engines are really important. They help us knife and fork our way through all of the content. But search engines, for all the good that they can do, they don't promote discovery. With search engines, when we show you things that we know that you're going to like, it's challenging then to find things that you don't know that you're going to like. So we have to choose when we use the filters and when we don't. But my favorite of all the coping mechanisms is the lie of multitasking. Multitasking. It's like a modern day skill. Everybody in the workforce needs to be able to multitask. I am a 21st century worker, therefore I multitask. Problem is, you've got to remember that multitasking is an entirely computer-based concept. It was invented in the mid-60s by a bunch of computer scientists in white lab coats who wanted to get central processing units to be more efficient. It is not a human trait. We know from our own studies and from other studies that we've looked at that human beings, this is not about a male-female thing, all human beings are on average 1/3 less efficient when they multitask. And then there's another dynamic that kicks in. Every time you get disrupted, it actually takes you a long period of time before you get back to the task at which you were doing. In our studies, we did some experiments on our own people, because we're like that, and we found that if you're a developer writing some pretty hairy code, and then somebody distracts you, it would take people, on average, 23 minutes to return back to the task that they were doing. Because what happens, you make a choice, right? Doing the coding's hard cognitive work. Before I go back to that hard work, I'll have a quick look at my email. I'll just have a look at Twitter, see what the footy scores are. And so we take this slow, meandering path back to the task that we were doing. So in a world of constant disruption, in a world of too much information, we're actually challenging our very definition of what productivity means. So again, this is not about bad technology. This is just simply about the coping mechanisms that we've inherited. But the kicker for me is actually this is disconnecting our own cognitive process. In a world where we continue to snack, we binge on information, we try and multitask, we're disrupted all the time, we actually change our own cognitive processes. We stop using the ability to think deeply. We very rarely have a moment when we can take a step back and think about the challenges that we face at home or at work, because those moments are now taken away by more and more information. So we live in a world of more information. We live in a world of incredible devices. And yet, we talk about the problem of information overload. And I find this hilarious, right? As someone who is naively optimistic about the role of technology in our future, we are complaining about the very thing that will enable more revenue, more profitability, more productivity, more capability in how we use technology. If you think that information is a gateway to achieving more, either on a personal level or at a professional level, we're complaining that we've got too much of it. It's just insane. So my call, the whole point about the rise of the humans, is we've got to turn that around. Instead of hating the digital deluge, we've got to learn to harness it, be it on an individual level or at an organizational level. And there are some things that you can do, and these are the areas that we focus on in the book. The first thing we've got to understand, in a connected world, our view of the customer could fundamentally change if we seek to do it. Traditionally today, most organizations think about their customers in a single dimension. They think about the dimension of the transaction that customer is just about to enact. In reality, there are 4 dimensions of the customer. In a connected big data world, there are 4 dimensions that are available to all of you to access and understand more about your customers. The second dimension is what some organizations are already doing today, and that's a historical dimension, which is, what have you done before? Okay, that's interesting. But where it really starts to get interesting is where you start to look at the third and fourth dimension. The third dimension is about me as a holistic whole human being. Yes, I am a Microsoft employee. Yes, I am a Star Trek fan. Yes, I am a father. Yes, I am an ice hockey nut. You better bloody understand which one of those personas I'm using. When I come to your brand, when I come to your organization, you better figure out which one of those that I am, because if you don't, you're not going to be giving me the service that I love. Many of you will shop on Amazon. Some of you with kids will have a similar experience to me. When I go to Amazon, and this is not to pick on Amazon, everybody's in the same kind of boat. When I shop for my son's birthday present on Amazon, why do I then spend the next 6 weeks getting shown adverts by Amazon for Lego? Right? I've just bought the Lego. I'm not buying that for another 12 months or maybe Christmas if he's been good. Right? Understand that I'm now a Microsoft employee. Give me some business books or give me some things about motorcycle. I don't know. But understand who I am. So this sense of a holistic whole individual. And then the final dimension is this social connectedness. So we know about the power of the social connected individual. But this isn't just about people whining about organizations on Twitter, although that's important. This is about, if I can understand the connection of people to each other, I can infer from that insight that will help me change what I deliver to the customer. So the point about the connected customer is this data is increasingly available to all of you. And you should be looking inside your organization, beyond that first dimension, beyond the second dimension, to really understand how can you give your people access to that data to give them greater insight to who your customers are and what kind of intent they have when they transact with you. But in order to do that, you need employees who are connected. You need employees who are transformed and able to be transformative. They are given the right tools to collaborate in the right kind of way. Michelle talked about our use of Yammer internally. That thing is a fundamental cultural change for our organization in how we collaborate, because it is based on a principle of open sharing. Everybody shares what we do. And we work out in the open so people can see what's going on. And when you have a workforce that's connected in that way, can access the data of the organization in that way, you can then start to unleash the power of your workforce to connect that data and to bring that to experience for your customers. And then there's data, right? You'd be surprised, I'm an IT guy and I'm going to give you a little lecture about big data. I have as much right to jump on that bandwagon as anybody else in the industry. But the point about big data is we've not really understood the point yet. When we talk about big data, most organizations, they start thinking about business analysis or business insight. And yeah, you'll get that from data, but there's a whole load of other stuff that you're going to get that will transform your businesses. We think of 3 key areas of the opportunity of the data that lies hidden within your organization, stuff that you don't really pay any mind to today. Number 1, I guarantee you will all have data inside your organization that will have monetary value to other organizations. So what are you doing to find that data? What are you doing to make that data available, create a new revenue stream, create a new business opportunity? You will have other data that if you connect it to other disparate data sets will then also derive value. Insurance companies now look at people's spending habits because they know, for example, that the people who buy those little felt furniture protectors to keep the scuff marks off your wooden floors are several times more likely to make their payments than people who don't. Who knew, right? This is what happens when you connect disparate data together. And then the third area is, if you're going to collect new data, start thinking about the multiple opportunities for what that data could do. So, for example, if you're sticking CCTV into your retail stores, don't just spot shoplifters with that data. Use it to understand the footfall through your stores. Look for multiple opportunities. Because when you unlock the data dividend in this way, you start to see the true power of big data. But big data itself is just a preamble to the real deal, the big picture, the thing that is going to change our relationship with technology forever, and it's already happening. And it's this thing called machine learning. Now, machine learning is this incredibly powerful computer science tool, basically using statistical pattern recognition to infer insight and meaning from vast swathes of data. That sounds like a load of computer science gobbledygook, but let me show you a real example of how this is going to change what we do. Some of you will have seen the news from last week, but we demonstrated live speech-to-speech translation via Skype. So we had a gentleman speaking English over a Skype call to a lady who was hearing German. She was speaking German, the gentleman was hearing English. This kind of Star Trek stuff is all powered by machine learning. These are the kinds of transformational services that will change the landscape of our world. They will change our relationship with technology forever. And it's not just about translation, it's about the recommendation engines, it's about all of the insight that we derive from data. This thing is huge. And the interesting thing about machine learning is when machine learning started, it was a concept that's based in the cloud. It's a tool that you need huge compute power, huge storage in order to be able to activate. But what's happening as technology progresses, and organizations like Microsoft, we're starting to make these tools much more accessible. So just like if you remember 15 years ago, if you wanted to write a formula in Excel, you needed 7 manuals, a PhD, and about 4 weeks, and if you were lucky, you might get the bleeming thing to work. These days, you click on a button in the ribbon and the thing auto-completes. The same is happening with our access to the power of the algorithms. They're becoming closer and closer and closer. We released a product recently called Power BI that enables you to use a natural language query against an unstructured data set. So I could have a completely chaotic data set. I could simply type in, tell me who sold the most in the last 3 months. And what Power BI does is it goes to our old friend Bing, because Bing understands natural language, and it says, listen, this is what I've been asked. What does that mean? And Bing says, well, based on a statistical probability, it probably means they're looking for time period 3 months, and they're looking for highest revenue. So these tools, this isn't just about data scientists in white coats and thick glasses anymore. This is about every single member of your organization having access to the kind of power and capability that this has. And if you want to understand how these tools work, they're all based on pattern recognition. Some of you will remember this email that did the rounds in about 2003, and it was a proper bit of research that showed if you're an English-speaking person, you could get a bunch of text, and as long as you put the first and last characters in the right space, you could mix up all of the other characters, and you could pretty much understand what's being said. Because what's happening in your brains is you have a pattern, you have a model, you have a framework of language, and that model enables you to decipher that text. What do you think happens if you showed this text to someone who doesn't speak English, or to a child who has yet to form their language capability? They couldn't make sense of it. And this is the limitation of the technology, and we'll talk more about that in a sec. So I don't see this dystopian future where the algorithms take over and all of the white-collar workers are redundant because we've got the algorithms to do the work and the robots to do the heavy lifting. I see a world where the humans can stand on the shoulders of those digital giants to achieve more. Because what we know is that machine learning is constrained by the framework that it's given. So there are some great examples. IBM provide us with some lovely ones. IBM have 2 supercomputers, one called Big Blue and the other called Watson. Now, Big Blue is the world's best chess player, and Watson is the world's best Jeopardy player, American TV quiz show. These are supercomputers. These are probably some of the most powerful computers in the world. Respectively, the best chess player, the best Jeopardy player in the world. I could beat both of them with one hand tied behind my back at a game of Snap or a game of Tiddlywinks, because they don't have the framework for those games. Right? This is the limitation of machine learning. And so equally, there's this other problem when we get into robotics. There's this lovely principle called Moravec's paradox, which is actually the stuff that we think is really, really hard, the cognitive stuff. It's dead simple for computers. But the fine motor controls, picking things up, that we think is really easy because we've done it since we were kids, is actually really hard. So for example, if I were to ask any of you, what's 47 divided by 13? You're all thinking, oh, God, that's a bit hard. And you might reach for a calculator. How hard do you think that calculation is for a computer? Nanoseconds. Now, if I were to throw this remote to you, I guarantee you one of you would be able to catch it. Computer robot couldn't do that. It's really, really hard. So as much as we can create the world's best chess player, it can't move the bloody pieces. It can't set up the board. Right? These are the limitations that we face with the technology, and that's why human beings have a massive role to play in the future of work and the future of how technology progresses. So moving forward, there are some things that I want you all to think about in your organizations, and they're all about how you deal with the digital deluge and how you learn to harness, not hate, that deluge and what it can do for you. The first thing is you have to understand, if you want to deliver transformational experiences for your customers, they don't just happen. You don't just come out of thin air or magic. You need transformational employees. You need employees who are empowered to be transformational. And in order for them to be empowered to be transformational, They need transformational tools, tools like Yammer that completely change the way they collaborate. The mobile devices that you'll see today that enable them to work from anywhere, treating work as an activity, not as a destination. That is the only way you will achieve true transformation in the services that you provide your customers. We need to stop talking about organizations and organization structure, and instead, we should be setting out to create intelligent organisms. And the difference between an organism and an organization is an organism can change, can evolve, can bend, can weave, depending on whatever's happening on any given time, whatever the market does, wherever you go, whatever happens, whatever people you have available, the organism will self-heal, it will adapt. And again, you can only do that if your people are empowered in the right kind of way. And in order to do that, you've got to let your people free, my brothers and sisters. This is all about all of the incredible talent that you have locked up inside your employees. And most organizations, they think about their employees in specific little domains. Dave's here to fulfill this job description. Forget all of the other skills that Dave has. Forget all of the other experiences, the wacky stuff he does on weekends, whatever that may be. All of that stuff is just left lying on the ground. When in reality, if you've got an organization that can be an intelligent organism, can look beyond just the roles of the job description, look for all of the skills and empower those individuals to get engaged in different areas of the business to add value, whatever that may be, you start to go a long way to getting to the right place. Most importantly, this is about this thing called a data culture. And that sounds a bit weird, but everybody in your organization needs to adopt this kind of curiosity, this inquisitive mind, want to have access to more data, want to understand different areas of the business, be empowered with not just the tools like the devices, but also the services. Today, organizations, they lock up all of their information in information silent. Well, you can't see the finance department's data, you can't see the none of that, right? We don't need any of that, unless, of course, you have some regulatory issues that mean that you do. But the reality is, if you instill in your people the ability to want to understand more about data, to want to understand more about the organization, to have that as a culture supported by the right kind of tools, then you can get much further in terms of what you can do with technology to transform your business. So when I look forward to the future, I do not see the Terminator, right? This is not the Terminator. The internet is not Skynet. Instead, I see a very different future. I see a world where human beings are standing on the shoulders of these digital giants. And it reminds me, it's a bit like when I was a kid, I did my maths O-level, and if you don't know what O-levels are, they're kind of like GCSEs, but a bit harder. And it was at a point in our society where we were debating the role of the pocket calculator in education, because pocket calculators had just become really sort of affordable for everybody. And I did my maths O-level with a bloody logbook and a slide rule, right? Now let me tell you, I am a better mathematician with a calculator than I am with a tabulated bit of paper and a slidey bit of plastic. Yes, I need to know the basics, but a calculator enables me to achieve more. And the issue that we face in today's society is exactly the same. We are being offered this incredible potential, this incredible power in technology. It offers this. The reason technology exists is for us to transform and change. But if all we do is sit back and use it the same way we've always done things, based on our experiences for the past couple of hundred years, we will never, ever achieve the greatness that technology lays out in front of us. So my call to all of you, above everything else, is to rise above that. Rise above what the technology can do. Think about what you can use the technology to reimagine, to transform your business and your relationship with your customers. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm done. Thank you very much.